Welcome, everybody. This is the third in our series of conversations online talking about wisdom in the COVID-19 crisis, ideas about how we can act and lead even more wisely. And one of the themes that has come up has been the notion of transition and movement. And so I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by my friend and colleague, Adam Wells. Hi, Adam.
Hi there, Julian.
And Adam, we're going to talk about the wisdom of El Camino because you are an El Camino mentor. You are a life transition coach. And as we've got to know each other the last 18 months, I've heard your story, your transformational journey over the last 8 years, having walked the Camino in 2011 and 2019. And it feels so opposite to be in this conversation with you a week after we had our conversation with Alison, our dear friend Alison, about dwelling in the empty space of not knowing. And all she talks about there, because the El Camino is a liminal space, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And here we have a really real example. So I'd love to just turn it over to you to bring this alive to us, Adam, and then let's inquire on the back of it about what it's telling us about wisdom.
Okay.
So I'd love to just let you roll on that.
Okay, well, it's a very dangerous thing to do. As I talk for hours and hours about the Camino. But yes, no, listening to Alison last week was quite incredible because so much of what she brought up was, you know, what you experience on Camino, as the Camino is a liminal space. Now, I mean, for those of you that don't know, the Camino is a 500-mile pilgrimage journey across northern Spain. So in the Middle Ages, it's 1200 years old. In the Middle Ages, it was the third most important Christian pilgrimage route in history. So just a bit of background there. And I've walked it in 2011, as you say, Julian, and again last year, 2019, and I walked those 500 miles of the most popular route, which is known as Camino Francés. Now, some of you watching this, I know will have walked the Camino, so it might bring, you know, memories back, and I hope it does, and does. And really, you know, the Camino can be done at so many different levels. And so what I'd like to just talk about now is really sort of, for me, it's the pilgrimage aspect of it. You can do it as a tourist and just enjoy the sights, the wine, the history of Spain, all of those joys, but you can also do it as a pilgrimage, which really means going sort of inside yourself. I remember somebody saying years ago, I don't know, a quote of, you know, if you only look to the external world for the answers, you only live half a life. And to live a full life, you also want to go internally. And to me, that's what pilgrimage and being a pilgrim is about. It's to go inside and give yourself the time and space to allow those answers that you're seeking potentially to come up. And so people walk the Camino for a whole host of reasons, you know, for bereavement, for, you know, time, you know, just time out, time to think, whole host of reasons. Now, as a liminal space, the Camino is, I think it's best if I give you a story to explain how the Camino operates as a liminal space. And so this was a story, this was before this lady, I met a lady on the Camino, probably this is in 2013, and I knew nothing about how the Camino does its magic, anything about liminality. And she just, I was walking with her, she's French-Canadian, and she just said, you can break the Camino down into 3 stages. The first stage is hell, the second stage is death, and the third stage is creation. And so I was rather curious, what's this all about? She said, let me explain. And what had happened was that her husband had suddenly just died. And she obviously was completely bereft and she didn't know what to do with herself. And somebody suggested go off and walk the Camino. So she looked into it and she decided, okay, I'm going to do this. And being French-Canadian, she decided to walk from the middle of France, from Le Puy. And so the journey to Santiago de Compostela, the end point where the cathedral is, was around 1,800 kilometers. And,
wow.
and she explained that, she said that first section, the first third for her was from the middle of France, so to speak, to, there's a city called Burgos, which is in more or less just before the middle of Spain as you go across the top of Spain. And she said that really was hell because it was the physical aspect. And also at the same time, she said, I was just crying every single day. I was grieving, I was screaming, I was wailing, I was doing it all because my life was completely over. She said, I could not see a life without my husband.
Yeah.
And, she said, but, the days went on. I'm in this place, the days go on, and there's only so much sort of crying you can do. She said, I got to the middle part of Spain, which we call is the Meseta. And this is sort of like the flat, barren, desert-like place. And there's no trees, there's nothing. And she was walking across this Meseta, and then suddenly I just dropped to my knees. And she said, I had this epiphany. I was on my knees, I had this epiphany that my husband was just part of my life. He wasn't my whole life. And he blessed me with 3 fantastic kids. He blessed me with 40 years of a wonderfully happy marriage. But that was it. It was part of my life. And she said, I got up and I started walking. And then in that third and final stage, creation, she said, I started thinking about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And she said, so it's a really, a death and a rebirth experience. And in that rebirth, I decided that I was going to go back to Canada and I was going to sell absolutely everything. And I was going to use that money to sort of help underprivileged children in other parts of the world, I think primarily Latin America. Actually, that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years. And it's been just wonderful. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. And it's given me a whole new lease of life. And I think that story really explains how a liminal journey works. It's a hero's journey. It's an archetypal process. It's a rites of passage where you're separated from your known world. You enter this liminal space, which is just purely confusion, uncertainty, but also freedom. So you've got the paradox, you're completely free in this liminal space to do whatever you like because you have no status, you have no identity, because that's all just gone. You're sort of between 2 worlds, betwixt and between 2 worlds. But you, in that space of freedom and unknown, you're psychologically all over the place. And that's where the challenge comes. But by sticking with it, and so on the Camino works its magic because you have this one goal, I'm going to get to Santiago. And you have helpers around you. And so when the going gets tough, there's always somebody that's going to help pick you up, or you hear a story from somebody, and there's an expression, you meet the people you meant to meet, and you walk with somebody for 5 minutes, you hear their inspiring story, and that sort of re-energizes you. Or somebody who's far worse off than you see somebody who's far worse off than you, and you think, wow, what am I worried about? And things like that. So this is the sort of the magic, but by sticking with the I'm going to get to Santiago come what may, that inner sort of resourcefulness, you find yourself working through that loss, that grief, or whatever the thing is, and you transform your consciousness. So it's like with the hero's journey, it's a journey of transformation of consciousness. And it's in that process that you then are able to sort of step into the next phase of your life. And really the Camino is really just a catalyst for that personal transformation. It activates, the things within us, the archetypal behaviors within us to make us change the way we actually think about ourselves. Primarily, it really rewrites your personal narrative. We come to the Camino, we come to this experience. I can't do this because I've got these limits. And suddenly you discovered you've walked over the Pyrenees on the first day. And wow, that's 17 miles over the Pyrenees. You're a 72-year-old lady. You've been terrified about doing that for months, and suddenly you've done it. You're not the same person that started the day. And you do this day after day after day, and you're breaking through those boundaries. And it comes to a point, where, wow, what's next possible? But simply speaking, the first third of the journey is the physical aspect of just breaking in the body. And we're so much in our mind. So why the first section is known as hell is because we are so many of us are ego connected. So you'll see on the first few days, the warrior, I've got to be the first to the refuge. I've got to beat that person that's next to me. I'm not going to be last. And so you have all this competitive spirit, and the Camino is fundamentally just slapping you around the face if you're walking too fast. or you're not drinking your water, you're not taking care of yourself physically, you are going to get pain. And some people will carry, no, I've got to walk, I've still got to win. So you walk through the pain. And to walk through pain for 500 miles is a tough thing to do. But some people will try. But eventually, it's that recognition of the transformation of consciousness of, and this is the wisdom of, you know, suffering is optional. So how do I transform? I'm suffering now. So what's the wisdom from this suffering? Actually, is to slow down. So I think, it was last year, I had a friend who walked the Camino. And so and she walked the first 7 days to a city called Logroño. But she didn't really walk because she was really struggling. And so she took the bus, and she rings me up from Logroño. And I lived there for 18 months, so I knew the city well. She said, Adam, I'm in Logroño. And she said, I've been on the bus for 3 days because my legs are hurting. And she said, you know, now what do I do? I can't carry on walking. And she said, shall I carry on taking the bus? And I said, well, what is your Camino? What do you want it to mean to you? What do you want it to be? Is it a bus Camino? Or is it a walking Camino? And I said, what is your fear? And the fear was fundamentally, she didn't want to lose the group she was with. She had a fear of being on her own. And so I just invited her to say, well, what if you just stayed and healed in Logroño for 3 days? And she reflected on it and she said, okay, I'll do that. And that transformed how she completely thought about her Camino. And from then she started walking after 3 days, and she had the most amazing experience for the rest of the way across Spain. But it was the suffering that drives the change. Yeah. And that's, you know, that's really, you know, the death and the rebirth and that's, you know, but so many of us will avoid looking at what's this pain meant to teach me. We'll take the taxi instead, or we'll give up. We'll give up the journey.
Wow. Adam, I mean, I've been with you, and should I ever choose to do the Alchemy, I'd like to do it with you because I know I'd make it to the other end. I mean, just the energy with which you describe it's amazing. And so this sense of liminal moment, you're setting off, you're going to get there, it's inner, and then so many shifts one goes through: whole, death, creativity, letting go, and all that. I mean, I could say more.
Yes.
What I'd love to do, Adam, is build on these lovely examples about, you know, the French Canadian, the woman, and who in her bus Camino. We take each of these 3 stages: the breaking in, hell, letting go, death, creativity.
Yeah.
For you, 2011, 2019, what are some of the things you experienced which helped you come out renewed in the way I know you have done?
Yes, no. So, I mean, the expression, so I went into my Camino in 2011, I left my job putting PowerPoint presentations together for 100-page slide decks, which nobody ever read, for big corporates, and got paid a lot of money, sitting at the top of a tower, which I couldn't.
We've all been there.
Yeah, thinking there must be more to life than this. And so that's why I walked my Camino. I knew what I didn't want. I didn't know what I did want. And so I left I walked my Camino in 2011 simply, I'm a seeker. I'm looking for answers, and I have no idea what the answers are. And so the only thing that came up, and this is the thing on the Camino, you don't get the answer. You don't get any flash, miracle. Yeah. This is your life. And I knew nothing about, obviously, what I know now. And so I came back from that Camino. All I knew was I wanted to inspire people to experience the Camino, just because nothing more than that. And then what happened was I just went on pretty much all the stages of the hero's journey in the real world. And so, so it was, what I really discovered was not having the answer. I learned to trust. And I learned to trust my intuition. So I did things like, okay, this seems like a good idea. I don't know why, I'm just going to go off and do it. So I set up a walking group, and serendipity played a big part. So in that walking group, one day a lady came to me and said, Adam, this is an amazing DVD of the Camino. I think you should show this DVD around the UK in cinemas. I looked at it, thought it's an American thing. No, too hard, parked it. 10 days later, I decided to go to the American Pilgrims on the Camino gathering in San Francisco. And I'm just mingling there, and I talked to a lady, And she says, oh, you're from London. She said, oh, maybe you can help me. She said, I'm the producer of this DVD, Walking the Camino, 6 Ways to Santiago. Can you show my film around the UK in cinemas?
How about that?
And within that, you know, it was that sort of serendipity. And so that's been the journey that I've actually been on, just following this path. And what I've noticed was that if you're patient enough, things do actually happen. Things do come together. And even the death and the rebirth stage, one of my passions too. So in 2016, I decided, actually, I've always wanted to live in Spain. I've always wanted to live. It's been something for years. And I decided to go and live in Logroño, and maybe I can promote this Camino film out in Logroño and everything else. But that experience actually proved to be the death experience, because none of it worked out. Even being in Spain, following my dream, that didn't work out. And I questioned, actually, should I be even doing anything more with this Camino stuff? And so you had the death, and then, but in that process, I found myself returning as, actually, no, this is still valid. And then I had more serendipitous connections to teach me around this whole liminal space of what the Camino is. It's a hero's journey, putting a rites of passage walk on. I was asked to put a rites of passage sort of handbook together, and we walked the Camino in 2019, which is why I did the walk last year. And that didn't turn out to be the way I expected it. And what it actually turned out to me was I suddenly realized that I'd gone from a seeker to being the provider. I'd gained over all these years this wisdom about the Camino. I'd helped a lot of people do their own Caminos and such like. And so what I've realized is that to be whole, to be integral, to be fully in with our integrity, we have to sort of be that seeker. So when we have that call from within, asking us to do something which we're terrified about, we have to follow that call, because it's at that stage we go off on this hero's quest, we learn this new thing, and at some point we see a gift from that, like the lady whose husband had died. She sees the gift, and it's at that point we become the provider. And throughout life, we all have to be seekers and providers. You know, the provider feels fantastic because they're providing their service, helping somebody who's seeking. And the seeker is desperately wanting to move forward on their path, and they're looking for a provider. And I think throughout our lives, as we go through all these different life stages, we'll be going through seeker, provider, provider, seeker. And that's what provides us with the fulfillment and the happiness and following the bliss. And that's really what I've gained from this experience. I feel very much whole with who I am now as a person. I'm not seeking anything anymore, which I had been seeking for years before I'd gone off on the Camino. But it's been a long hero's journey for these last 8 years.
I mean, a long hero's journey with huge amount of patience, but really experiencing the different stages.
Yes.
But a sense now, I'm listening to you, of almost complete clarity. I mean, I'm hearing the seeker-provider thing still going through your mind, but complete clarity about what your gift is.
Yeah, totally. And even on this.
And would you say what it is, Adam? What is your gift?
Well, my gift is to ultimately it's to inspire people to follow those calls to change.
Okay.
And I see it doesn't have to be on the Camino. I mean, the Camino is a catalyst. It's a container to really accelerate the process. But really, I mean, I think, this is personal growth, and what we miss in this world is I think elders. And we live in a very much an adolescent society, and there is this phase of life called elderhood, which is wisdom. Where, as we get older, and elderhood isn't, you don't have to be 80 to be an elder. You can be an elder at any age if you're subscribed to that wisdom and you're sharing your wisdom. And so by following your calls to change, we grow in that process, we mature, we go through the life stages, and we gain that wisdom and experience. And that's what society needs. We need our elders to support the people on the path behind us. We've already taken the journey. So that's my passion. I'm
hearing you're following the call to change, but you're helping others follow the call to change. Carrying this lexicon, litany of ideas and concepts which come deeply held by the experience of going through hell, death, and creativity.
Yes.
Twice, but over the bookending a whole period of transformation for yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that it's almost like a realization that, you know, we are all the hero of our own life story, and we have this all within us, and it's just to activate it. And and then once we stop that, it becomes a muscle. It's like, just becomes a muscle of trust, that you do it once and then you do it again and again, and it's a muscle of trust. And then that's where the magic happens, and that's how we change the world, in my view. It won't change in a way from top down. It will change from each individual upwards.
I mean, let's go with that a little bit, and the muscle of trust and where change comes. And I mean, if I could invite you, Adam, if, you know, you and I, we started this conversation, we thought we could talk forever about this, and we could. And one of the things I've heard you say to me is, well, it's very, you know, we're in a big liminal space here. We talked about it before, COVID-19. We're, you know, in one right now. And one of the things you've said to me, it's, you know, probably right now we're day one of the El Camino. You know, it's very early days. What would you say to us, you know, pausing now? You've created this fabulous picture of what it is. What would you say to us about living wisely now? What the El Camino wisdom? If you were talking to me as an individual, and to wider society, what are the 2 or 3 things that you feel are really important for us to carry in our minds?
Well, I think that we are right at the beginning of a Camino journey. And, you know, with COVID-19, this isn't something that's going to be fixed in 3 months or 6 months. I think it's going to take years, and society as well. And so it's recognizing we're right at the beginning of that journey. So we're right in this phase of where our assumptions and expectations are meeting with a reality. And often our assumptions, expectations don't meet with reality. And it's that fact that there's this big crash. So when we're walking in first time and our boots don't work and we're exhausted, sense of hitting the reality. Exactly, and it's really, okay, so what is reality? And I think the key thing is with Camino, this first phase, if we're in the health phase, is actually taking care of the body. We're in the body phase. So there's a part of it which is that if we're feeling discomfort, we're feeling disequilibrium, we're struggling with this, because let's say everybody's on Zoom calls now, 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day is work, and you're at home and you've got no space, and all of that, actually this is affecting my body, and it's actually recognizing, am I suffering? And what can I do differently? Because suffering is optional, and we're just right at the beginning of the journey. So some of us will burn out. If we're still in our ego mind, we're going to burn out. You're not going to finish it. And so it's actually the stepping back and what is the right pace for this stage? And so I suppose in a way it's accept the new reality. Don't think of the old world, that's gone. It's adapt to the new reality, and we're on a journey. And I suppose the second part of that is that we're on a journey. It's being the mindfulness, it's being present. That we don't know when this journey is going to finish. We don't know how long it's going to take. The truth is, it will take as long as it takes. This is the vaccine or whatever it is. It will take as long as it takes. So so on the walk in Spain, the only thing that matters is the walk for today. So it's only today's villages that count. I'm just going to head off, going off in this direction. I know the Santiago, and I'm just going to focus on today. And I suppose that's, it's those sort of metaphors that
wonderful. I mean, a sense of patience in the journey. We're just beginning. Let go of our egos. Go with it. Be mindful day to day. Sense of really experiencing it, being very present. You've said all the way through this conversation, there's been this sense of trust, and jumping into the community that's surrounding you, see what happens, serendipitous, trust it to come out, seek a provider, be those things.
Yes. And I think there's this is an archetype, this transition, this journey here, it's an archetypal process. So we can probably foresee the stages that we will go on. Society, there will be a death, or maybe a major death and rebirth. And I think just understanding the process, for us individually, in many ways, we can't control the global stuff as an individual maybe, but for our own life, actually I want to get to know the process a little bit more, so it doesn't come as a shock when something happens. It's like, okay, I understand what's going on. I can place myself in this bigger picture. This is actually going to take so much longer than I think it's going to take. Oh, okay, I'm fine with that. And things like that I think is key.
Wow, Adam. Wow.
Yeah.
Adam, seriously, I mean, in almost 25 minutes, we've covered 500 miles, which is usually 35 to 45 days. You've brought it alive both personally and through all your stories of others. And you've generalized on the back of it about where we are right now, at the beginning of another journey, another liminal space, about the pain that's involved in that, about letting go of ego, about trusting what's going on around us, trusting purpose, being mindful, being patient. Thank you so much, Adam. It's been brilliant.
It's been great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Julian.